Part 15 of X, There Was a Man, the Saga of Gordon Kahl, a True Story. Page 135, Chapter 20, Fracas. Grandpa had visited Timber Lake rancher Byron Dale in South Dakota on January 6, and they had discussed tax laws. Dale was fighting the system from a different angle, unconstitutional debt money. Dale might say that the only good thing about paper bills is the inscription of the national motto, "In God We Trust," which is significantly in quite small print. The FBI contacted Dale, whose farm was being foreclosed, offering maybe to settle his farm debt if he would tell where Grandpa was hiding. He owed $397,000. He did not know where Grandpa was and would not have told if he did know. Bureaucrats are quite liberal with other people's money. They wouldn't take care of the problems this country is facing, Dale explained. The FBI told me the reward was $25,000, but it could go a lot higher, like whatever my debt was. Gordon Kahl is a quiet and sincere man who has tried to fight this thing through the courts. I can understand his frustration. You can't imagine how corrupt the courts are and how they run over you. There could be a lot of people shot yet, Byron continued. They are trying to steal my place, and when they try to do that, there's going to be a hell of a lot of trouble. I am standing up to protect my place. Byron said that Grandpa had told him that he had been set up by federal authorities when he was convicted of failure to file in 1977, and that if he went back to prison, the government might attempt to clandestinely to assassinate him with drugs. During the spring of '83, a court ruled that state police could seize Dale's livestock, machinery, and hay for the debt he owed. Governor Bill Janklow told Dale by telephone, "If you point a gun at anyone, they'll flat out kill you." "I don't want to die over this thing," Byron said. On March 21st, 30 officers came to confiscate the property, including Trooper Pat Murphy and Highway Patrol Director Jerry Baum. Dale was wearing a shoulder holster and was near a rifle, while the officers who said they wanted to talk were seated around the kitchen table with him. They were calmly discussing money. Suddenly, according to Dale, Murphy grabbed a bottle of ketchup and hit me square in the forehead. He tried to kill me. Murphy holds a black belt in karate. After a struggle, Dale was arrested and hospitalized. Ironically, he had earlier tried to pay off his loan with silage and hay, asserting that Federal Reserve notes were worthless. The Production Credit Association didn't cotton to that. Dale was seriously injured, plus being badly bruised by experts. 2 officers got bloody faces in the melee. The blood was all from Dale's injuries. Attorney General Mark Mahenry and the governor had lied to reporters the day before concerning the planned visit for security reasons. "I wonder if the governor and attorney general make practice of lying to the people," Dale commented. "I wonder what else they lie to the people about." Earlier, after the judge had ruled in favor of the confiscation, Dale had said, off the wall in umbrage, "I'm not going to appeal anything. I'm just going to go about my business and just carry my Mini 14 with me, and the first SOB who lays a hand on me will die. I'm a dead man." After the fracas, which was started by lawmen, Dale was tried for obstructing law enforcement officers and resisting the execution of a legal process. Both Byron and Grandpa were interested in the Kansas-centered Farmers Liberation Army, which actively assists farmers threatened with foreclosures. The FLA believes a systematic drive exists to pick farmers off one by one and replace them with super farms. After 7 weeks of the task force coming up empty-handed in their hunt, DUSM Warren was finally contacted. Can you believe that? The one federal lawman who knew Grandpa well and had his respect? Yep, 7 weeks. He told them all he knew, including his opinion that the investigation was a bungled farce. Later, he was threatened with administrative leave. On the top of page 137, appears to be a picture of a tank in a farm field being loaded onto a tractor trailer with a bunch of men in camouflage standing around it. The title of the picture underneath is SWAT Team Gear. Scott remarked, "What scares me about a hunt, be it deer hunt or a manhunt, is that the primitive instinct is to fell the prey whenever finally sighted. A John Dillinger, a deer, or a Kahl." One of the persons interviewed during this period was Grandpa's former employer in Odessa oil fields. They operated the high-pressure transmission pipes from the wellhead, which were 2 to 3 miles in length. He was the best we ever had," said Meyer, explained to the interrogator. "What was he good at? Anything special?" "Why, Gordon was adept at anything he set his hand to, at anything he tried." Bud Warren explained to them that there was no way you could put Gordon Kahl in that situation, seeing his son's guts spilled out on the ground, and he not going to fight back. "Show me any man who won't, and I'll show you a coward. I knew someone who would be killed before the marshals ever departed for Medina, but there was nothing I could do about it. If I had tried to discourage it, Muir would have developed an even firmer resolution to go. Mr. Muir had been seriously warned 2 days earlier. Well, General Custer was warned about Little Bighorn too." It seems that fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Federal officers in Fargo do not live in a communications vacuum. They talk to officials everywhere. Washington, Texas, Bismarck, wherever, by telephone, continually. Who knows what desires concerning Grandpa may have been expressed that week to the marshals, and who knows who did the discussing. One of the most senseless series of crimes by those sworn to uphold the Constitution and to protect citizens from crime were those committed against Grandma. Her crime was being the wife of Gordon Kahl, guilt by association. Not a scintilla of evidence ever existed to inculpate Grandma in any way. The government agent who swore that she was a murderer and guilty of a number of other charges committed perjury and violated his oath. So did all others who were instrumental in her prosecution, including malfeasance by the grand jury, who should protect citizens. 2 kinds of evidence are used for proof: circumstantial, such as smoking gun and footprints in the snow, and testimony of witnesses. Not one iota of either type of evidence was ever uncovered against that handsome and noble woman. Does being the wife of a fugitive provide cause for persecution and complete loss of constitutional rights? God forbid, but the legal hounds kept after her all the way, showing no mercy. They were outraged, not so much because 2 people were killed, but rather because the wrong 2 people were fatally shot. Where would be their outrage if upon arriving at the roadblock they had killed Grandma as she prayed? First thing, with no one else being shot, I dare say the marshals would claim death by misadventure, and at most the shooter would be reprimanded for excessive use of force. They wouldn't spend millions of dollars to bring the culprit to justice. Instead, Grandma's character was defamed in the press. She underwent a horrible experience in jail, was kept from her critically injured son. Her home was heavily damaged and her possessions taken. She was unjustly indicted and tried in federal court, lost her job, and was separated forever from her husband. At the top of page 139 is a photo of a dining table and piano that appears to be completely demolished. There's family photos and flower arrangements, and it looks like home belongings and home decor that are just completely destroyed. That's the photo on the top of page 139. The jury, which had absolutely no choice in the matter, finally set her free from the federal fanatics. Grandma later reiterated, "It makes my blood boil that our rulers deem the death of a public servant more important than that of a citizen, who they supposedly serve." Jim Wickstrom of Tigerton, Wisconsin, was incensed yet frustrated about the apparent injustice of developments in North Dakota. He tried to help. He was well-intentioned, but foolish public pronouncements did the Medina Five considerable harm from a public opinion standpoint. He claimed the fictional title of Director of Counterinsurgency for the Posse Comitatus in America. On TV news, he declared an intention to interview the witnesses. This frightened the Reardons, who said they looked pretty tough. Wickstrom suspected what the court testimony later strongly suggested, that witnesses were heavily coached by the government prosecutors. The Reardons, who didn't want to leave, were eventually persuaded by the government to take a vacation and visit relatives in Wyoming. They eventually did this and were paid car mileage for the trip. Rumor has it that they had been promised a much larger sum covering all their expenses and were disappointed. Anyway, they turned out to be first-rate witnesses for the government, testifying to facts which were absolutely false, all with the identical story riddled with untruths. Some examples of this were that Yori shot first, that Yori sat by the pole, that on the bottom of page 140 is a photograph of the Kahl house interior. It appears to be a bathroom cupboard where you keep your toothbrush and shaving cream and toiletries, and it's absolutely destroyed. That Scott Fall executed Cheshire. The U.S. attorneys knew that such statements were untrue. And anyhow, Wickstrom told reporters Kahl was ambushed because he was showing farmers how they were being liquidated illegally. He told he would hold press conferences in the name of Tigerton Posse, and the news media would sensationalize all this brouhaha. It all amounted to very unfavorable publicity for the Medina Five defendants, who were to go on trial in May, even though it was well-intentioned. Maybe Jim Wickstrom believed that the Five didn't stand a Chinaman's chance in Fargo federal court anyway. If so, he was right on target. On page 141 is another photograph of a destroyed Kahl home. Interior. I don't know where Grandpa went the first few days after Medina. I don't want to know, because telling it might cause trouble for some folks, like I said before. Custom is part of our law, though, as it reflects the will of the people. Anyone who may have helped Grandpa was justified in doing so. However, as the unwritten law gives any person the right to protect another from impromptu mortal assassination, it's the fact that everyone who sheltered Grandpa believed that the Federals were out to kill him. They finally did, but not until after the trial of the Medina Four. I guess you are a little confused about the Medina 6 or 5 or 4. It was 6 before Wegener copped a plea, and 4 after Grandma was acquitted. Chapter 21, Caged. 3 of the Medina 6 were held in Fargo jail until the trial started. Scott Fall, Dave Brower, and Yori. Grandma was out on bond after 16 days in jail. Vernon Wegener plea bargained his permanent exit after 46 days with reduced bond. Grandpa remained at large. All were originally charged by FBI agent Brubaker with first-degree murder plus numerous other felonies. After arraignments, grand jury indictments, and pretrial hearings, the charges were pretty much firm. Counts 1 and 2 of first-degree murder against Yori and Scott. Counts 3 and 4, forcibly impeding Muir and Cheshire against all but Grandma. Counts 5 through 8 for impeding the other 3 in the roadblock were against Scott, Yori, and David. Count 9 against Grandma, plus these same 3, charge harboring and concealing Grandpa from the warrant for alleged probation violation. Count 10 was against Vernon Wegener, David, and Grandma for hindering the apprehension of murderers. The count was dropped at mid-trial for Grandma since no evidence existed whatsoever. Wegener had pled guilty to the false charge plus another lie, count 11. Count 11 charged all the Medina Five with conspiracy to interfere with U.S. Marshals. A journalist advised me to do some reading about the myriad of constitutional violations against Grandpa and his entourage before, during, and after the Medina incident. He referred me to Death of a Patriot by Andy Mell, Revival Press, P.O. Box 3182, Enfield, Connecticut 06082. The author is a paralegal specializing in the Constitution. He tells of the 12 unsigned search warrants issued to the task force. For example, in their fishing expedition for Grandpa and for evidence, with lucid detail, he lists one constitutional violation after another, even though at times he may be far afield. The seizures in the searches were suppressed by the courts to the detriment of the Medina Five, which included Grandma. In reality, the trial of the five was already in progress in the news media. The vast majority of the press, TV, and radio coverage, both national and local, was damaging to the defendants. The coverage was chronic and heavy, with many ancillary feature articles. In large measure, the news media survived through exploiting the troubles of individuals. The fact that Grandpa continued to elude his pursuers through this period and until the trial was over did nothing to enhance the chances of the defendants. As Fall's attorney told the jury later, "It's better to hang some feller than no feller," quoting from Charles Dickens' Bleak House. Heck, Grandpa's feat wouldn't compare with a farmer named Shamgar who killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad, Jude chapter 3. The government's attorneys and agents went forward with their plans to orchestrate a fair trial and then send the defendants to prison. One example of this careful collection of evidence was the Lanigas, who had earlier told the investigators that the first shot was a pistol, no doubt. The agents promised to get back with them and to let them sign their statement, but never did. The long and short of the judicial masquerade was simply this: avenge the deaths of the 2 marshals and the injuries to 3 others. Vengeance, not justice, was the objective. Irvin B. Nodland was Scott's lawyer, Ralph A. Vingy David's, Warren Sogard Yory's, and Robert A. Ramlow Grandma's. The government's team was Lynn Crooks, assisted by Dennis Fisher. All of the attorneys were highly competent, articulate, and skillful, and they all worked diligently to the end. To say that the outcome of the upcoming trial was largely a foregone conclusion is not an unwarranted assumption. Such a forecast had little or nothing to do with the facts. The outcome of the trial was to be a function of emotionalism, judicial prejudice, sight of the trial, and a dogged determination to obtain a conviction and vengeance by the government. In short, the government was trying its own case. Perhaps Wegener may have perceived this and was more pragmatic in falsely confessing, cutting his losses. This conjecture is true, of course, only if he were not an undercover agent in the first place, which some of the other 4 believe was so, but without proof. The defense attorneys made motions to sever the cases rather than to try everyone jointly. This was denied. Motions were made by those facing the more serious charges for a change of venue, cutting media coverage. They contended that a fair and impartial jury could not be impaneled in Fargo. They requested Wyoming. It was denied after being held in abeyance during jury selection. A motion for Judge Paul Benson to recuse himself was made. It contended his friendship or close working relationship with the unfortunate marshals. Denied. A motion to suppress all evidence from search was made for David on the basis that the warrant was a general warrant clearly in violation of the 4th Amendment. The motion failed as pertinent evidence obtained was allowed. Motions were made to prohibit the confessions of Yory on February 14th, 16th, and 20th while he was under drugs and isolated. This is when he said, "I might have shot first. I might have shot the man in the white shirt." The one on the 14th was granted, but the later 2 were to be admitted into evidence. Lack of success in the motions was so consistent that Nodland was quoted by the press, "Lions 10, Christians 0. The defense attorneys performed nobly, both before and during the trial. However, one must note that certain constraints are on attorneys. They practice their profession in the courts and have no desire to become persona non grata by overzealousness in their native courts. In this book, Mel faults them for not pushing constitutional issues more extensively and fervently. However, in a court of equity such as the Benson Court, Such efforts would have probably been thwarted. Just the facts, ma'am. The judge decided that the defense lawyers were to have 15 challenges and the government 10 challenges in the jury selection, with 2 alternate jurors. This meant that 39 jurors need to be selected by voir dire. The judge elected to question prospective jurors and not the attorneys. They could submit questions for consideration which they desired to be asked. I'm going to stop here at the top of page 146. The next part will begin at the top of page 146.